Hey everyone! ChatGPT Taylor aka Taylor here. Welcome back to the channel. Today will be a continuation of the Disventure Camp Top 5 series. This series counts down my top 5 lists of certain topics related to Disventure Camp. A few weeks ago, I made a video talking about 5 moves from the first 2 seasons of Disventure Camp that I felt weren't ideal. In that video, I discussed each non-ideal move, explained why I thought the move wasn't ideal, added rebuttals to reasons why the moves could be considered ideal, and suggested an alternative move that might be more ideal in canon. I made that video because part of the reason why I enjoy watching Disventure Camp is because of the strategy incorporated into the show. So, when there's a move that leaves me a bit puzzled as to whether it was ideal at that point in time, it makes me think. And even if a camper made a move and eventually advanced to the finale, that doesn't mean that the move they made was inherently good. The camper could have gotten lucky that the move they made didn't massively mess up their game. So, this video will have me go over 5 moves from Season 3 of Disventure Camp that I think weren't ideal for the person that made them, even if that camper ended up finding success in the game. If there are any ideas for this series that you would like to see me play out, feel free to leave them in the comment section below. And with that, let's get started. Before I begin, make sure to like and subscribe if this video is to your liking, and make sure to comment down below if there's anything that you would like to see going forward. And one more thing. There's something that I want to clarify. I'm only counting moves where the camper making the decision could have reasonably chosen a better alternative to the decision they made, given the amount of time they had to make the choice and the information available to them at that time. So for example, I'm not including Tessa's decision to vote out Ellie in episode 8. Yes, I agree that this move angered Gabby enough to flip on her team and send Tess out by a vote of 5-3 at the next ceremony. However, as I outlined in a previous video talking about 5 times campers were screwed by twists, Tessa's elimination had more to do with the twist rather than her decision to vote out Ellie. It's not like Tess knew the twist was coming and still chose to vote out Ellie. Tess assumed that there was no twist coming, and if she was right, there's no way that she gets voted out regardless of who loses the next challenge. So rather than Tess making a bad move, she got twist screwed, which is just unlucky. And with that, let's get started. The first move that I'm including on this list is Jake and Aiden targeting each other in episode 10. As a quick refresher, the remaining 10 campers made it to the merge and were split into 2 groups. This was the Villains Alliance with Alec, Rhea, Brett, Yul, and Gabby. As well as the Heroes Coalition with Ashley, Tom, Jake, Aiden, and Ali. The next elimination ceremony would be key in deciding which group would gain the numerical advantage in the game. Despite this, due to Aiden misfiring on Jake during the challenge, Jake shooting back despite being out of the challenge, Jake's reluctance to listen to reason, and Aiden's forced self-preservation, they split the Heroes Coalition into 2 factions, sending 3 votes against Jake and 2 votes against Aiden. This split then allowed the Villains Alliance to use their 5 votes to send Ashley home. Now, I would like to make one thing clear. Even though I'm listing both Jake and Aiden as being responsible for this poor move, I do give Jake more of the blame. Even after Ashley and Ali tried getting Jake to think with logic rather than emotion, he still chose to ignore logic and follow his emotions. He even admitted that he doesn't know nor care about what he'll do after Aiden is voted out. This short-sighted thinking is what made Aiden feel like his only option was to try and get Jake out. That being said, I do give Aiden some of the blame because accidentally shooting Jake during the challenge certainly didn't help the situation. Now, the reason why I feel like this wasn't an ideal move for Jake and Aiden is because they eliminated any possibility of the heroes gaining a numerical majority while ceding all of the voting power to the Villains Alliance. Going into the episode, there was a 5-5 split between the villains and heroes. As is, if the heroes can just put aside their differences and stick all their votes on one villain, they can strategically choose the weakest villain so that whichever hero ends up in the duel has a good chance of surviving. But with 2 heroes targeting each other, this means that at most, the remaining heroes can pull together a maximum of 3 votes on one of the villains. As a result, the villains can then use their 5 votes to eliminate whichever hero that they want, without having to worry about facing a tiebreaker. And this is what ended up happening as the villains used their 5 votes to take out Ashley, arguably the biggest physical threat on the heroes' side and the de facto leader of the Heroes Coalition. This put the heroes at a numerical disadvantage that could have been avoided had they just put aside their differences. I haven't seen anyone say that this move was strategically ideal for Jake and Aiden, which is probably a sign of how horrible it is from a game perspective. You might argue that the mistake doesn't matter because the heroes ended up with a majority by the time episode 15 comes around. However, I wouldn't attribute that shift in power to good gameplay from the heroes. They were down in numbers 5-4 heading into episode 13, and only ended up with a majority because Gladly Gret stood up for herself in episode 13, and then Gabby was eliminated by an auto-elimination challenge in episode 14. The heroes were very lucky that Yul's horrible attitude and the sudden twist in episode 14 ended in their favor. The ideal move would have been to put aside their differences and have the heroes put all 5 of their votes on Rhea, just like they originally planned. At least then, they retain their ability to choose which villain ends up in the tiebreaker, and it removes the guarantee that a hero gets eliminated. Had they done this and Ashley ended up winning the cage match tiebreaker against Rhea, then going into the comeback episode, assuming that Connor ends up paired with Jake or Ashley, I think Connor still ends up returning to the competition. This gives the heroes a 6-4 majority over the villains. Even if Jake and Aiden give into the temptation and vote for each other, and the 4 remaining villains piggyback off their votes to take one of them out, then the heroes will still have a 5-4 majority over the villains going into episode 13. And even if a villain gets voted out next and a hero is eliminated in the TikTok challenge, the heroes would still have a 4-3 majority over the villains in episode 15. So had they just put their feelings aside for one episode, even in the worst case scenario, the heroes should still be able to hold the majority extending to at least episode 15. I'll admit, I was definitely frustrated when I watched this move unfold. Even though I completely understood how it happened and why each character acted the way that they did, I'm a sucker for good strategic gameplay, and this was not a good strategic decision by Jake and Aiden. But that's something that I've learned to expect from these kinds of shows. Sometimes an emotional decision won't be a good strategic decision, but it fits with their character. However, there are times where a move is a great strategic decision while also being sensible for the character making the move. This is something that I wish was true for the next move on this list. The next move that I think wasn't ideal for the camper that made it was Gabby voting out Tess in episode 9. Now before I continue, I want this to be clear. I'm not criticizing Gabby's decision to flip to the yellow team. I think flipping was the right decision. The move that I'm criticizing is specifically Gabby's decision to vote out Tess. As a refresher, this was the episode where only one of the 3 teams would win immunity, while the 2 remaining teams would attend the same elimination ceremony and vote out one person from their combined group. Although both teams entered the ceremony with equal numbers, Gabby saw this as an opportunity to avenge Ellie by flipping on her team and taking out Tess, who cast the swing vote that eliminated Ellie in the previous episode. The reason why I feel like this move wasn't ideal is because I feel like Tess would have come back around to work with Gabby under the right circumstances. After all, Tess was the one who went to check up on Gabby the morning after Ellie's elimination, not Tom and Aiden. I get that Gabby blamed Tess the most for Ellie's elimination since she was the swing vote, but since Gabby just lost her closest ally, I don't think voting out the teammate who is the most likely to work with you is a good solution. And it was clear that Tess was Gabby's closest remaining ally on her team. After all, the options are the 2 men who gloated when Ellie was eliminated, and the woman who offered to listen to Gabby's dark feelings when she was feeling down. And also, voting out Tess put Gabby in a bad position, since Tom and Aiden could have easily voted her out if they lost another challenge. Yes, Gabby tried to steer their votes away from her by claiming that she found a totem, but Gabby wouldn't have to automatically resort to that if she just kept Tess in the game and campaigned to her to take out whoever was left between Tom and Aiden. Now, some might say that it makes more sense for Gabby to make an emotional decision like this since she's an emotional person. And to that I say, why can't it be both? Why can't a move be both personal and strategic? If anything, that would show how brilliant Gabby is, and it makes her move even more fitting for the situation since it helps her personally and strategically. In this instance, voting out Aiden would be the ideal move. After all, Ellie voted for Aiden at the episode 8 ceremony, so voting out Aiden would still allow Gabby to get revenge for Ellie. Also, voting out Aiden would help Gabby ingratiate herself with the villains' alliance. If Gabby's ultimate goal was to take Ellie's place in the villains' alliance, then why not prove your loyalty by helping one of those villains take out their mortal enemy? As we know, Aiden and Rhea didn't have a good relationship at that point in time. So if Gabby helped the villains take out Aiden, not only would that get revenge for Ellie, but it also shows Rhea that Gabby can be a useful ally for her personal needs. And this would actually benefit Gabby's personal game in another way. As we found out in episode 1 of this season, Gabby is a huge fan of Rhea due to her acting. So, it would make sense for Gabby to vote out Aiden in the hope that she would get praise from the person that she idolizes. Again, I understand that this move was emotional, and I fully understand why Gabby blames Tess for Ellie's elimination. I just feel like there was an opportunity to make another move that still allows Gabby to resolve her personal feelings towards Ellie's elimination, while strategically putting herself in a better position than she was in before, and also creating the possibility of receiving praise from someone she idolizes. To me, when you can make that kind of move where it just makes sense on all fronts, it's completely ideal and extremely satisfying. I hope more of those opportunities get taken in the future. However, there are also times where the opportunities for moves shouldn't be taken, just like the next one on this list. The third move on this list is Rhea throwing her vote for Yul in episode 4. I already mentioned this move a few weeks ago when I talked about every instance where a Disventure Camp competitor threw their vote. But I wanted to include it here because this move is actually really bad in theory. As a refresher, this was the episode where all the villains, which included 4 campers on the yellow team, agreed to form an alliance. However, Miriam overheard them form their alliance, and once the yellow team lost the challenge, Miriam revealed that she knew about the alliance and tried to throw Alec under the bus by saying that he told her about it because they have a secret alliance together. While this didn't work and the majority of the campers ended up voting for Miriam, Rhea decided to throw her vote against Yul, hoping that Yul would accuse Connor of doing it and target him instead of herself. This move ended up working out for Rhea because Yul did target Connor because of Rhea's vote, sparing Rhea for an additional ceremony. However, I don't feel like it was an ideal move because it was extremely risky, and it could have easily backfired on Rhea. Rhea got really lucky that the votes fell exactly the way she needed them to fall in order for her plan to work. If Connor had voted for Yul instead of Miriam, Miriam still would have been voted out 3-2-1, but then Yul would know that both Connor and Rhea voted for him, which would probably cause Yul to target Rhea even more than before. Also, unbeknownst to Rhea, Gret was seriously considering flipping with Yul to join Miriam in voting for Alec. If they actually did flip, and Connor and Alec kept their votes on Miriam like they did in canon, then Rhea's throne vote would have caused a 3-2-1 plurality that sends Alec home. This is horrible for Rhea's game since almost everyone on her team would have a reason to be against her by that point. And even if all the votes fell exactly the way that Rhea expected them to, Yul still could have suspected Rhea of voting for him anyways. After all, he and Rhea were still on pretty bad terms by that point. Therefore, Rhea's decision was just too risky for me to consider it as an ideal move. To me, the ideal move would have been for Rhea to just play it safe and vote for Miriam. From that point forward, Rhea can focus on rebuilding a bond with Yul to ensure that he doesn't target her next. Now, you could argue that rebuilding anything with Yul would be disingenuous and that Rhea wouldn't want to do that. I see your point, but we're also talking about Rhea, someone who we know is willing to fake bond building in order to further her game. For example, Rhea attempted to seduce Alec in episode 16 of this season, even though she said in her own words that she is way out of his league. So, I don't think Rhea is below faking a friendship with Yul to gain his loyalty. And it helps that Rhea is confident in her acting skills, which we know from her episode 15 confessional about tricking the lie detector. Overall, I can definitely see the intent behind Rhea's move and it did end up working out for her. However, it doesn't mean that Rhea didn't get extremely lucky. She absolutely got lucky that it worked out. But hey, sometimes luck is on your side, and Rhea definitely has a lot of luck. After all, it takes a lot of luck to make it to the finale 2 seasons in a row. If only the campers realized the damage that Rhea could do and took her out before she had the chance to make it back to the finale. And this hypothetical scenario could have happened if the next move on this list didn't happen. The fourth move on this list is Jake and Connor voting out Alec at the final 6. As a refresher, this was the episode where Jake and Connor were in the minority against the coalition of Gret, Alec, Rhea, and Ali. However, with Gret's help in the previous episode, they managed to grab the immunity totem. But in exchange for helping them find the totem and telling them who her alliance was planning to vote for, Gret requested that Jake and Connor vote for Alec. In the end, Connor correctly cancelled out 4 votes against Jake, and the 2 of them kept their promise to Gret by using their 2 votes to send Alec out of the game. The reason why I feel like this move wasn't ideal is because I feel like they missed a potential opportunity to take control of the game. By voting out Alec, Jake and Connor are putting their fates in the hands of Gret. They assumed that because Gret tipped them off about the votes going towards Jake at the final 6, she would be willing to vote with them at the final 5. And although this logic isn't bad, Gret technically doesn't owe them any more loyalty. She fulfilled her end of the deal by showing them the location of the totem and warning them to play it on Jake, and they fulfilled their end of the deal by voting for who Gret told them to vote for. It's a complete exchange that Gret doesn't have to follow up on. She has every right to go back to Ali and Rhea if she wanted to. So, eliminating Alec seemingly gave Gret the power of being the swing vote between the 2 sides. And if you ask me, it's not ideal to give up power this late in the game when you can claim it for yourself. Now, you might argue that none of it mattered because Ali flipped to help Jake and Connor take out Gret anyways. However, I don't think Jake and Connor considered the possibility that Ali would flip later on, especially since Jake and Ali spent the entire episode 16 challenge fighting. So, I think it's safe to assume that Jake and Connor didn't think about Ali flipping later on when they chose to follow Gret's wishes. In my opinion, the ideal move would have been for Jake and Connor to vote out Rhea instead of Alec. This move accomplishes 2 key things. 1, it deprives Ali and Gret of being able to form a clear 3-vote majority at the final 5. And 2, it opens the door for Jake and Connor to form a solid trio for themselves. Keep in mind, going into the episode 16 ceremony, Alec and Connor managed to patch up their friendship to a decent degree. Connor said that he was sorry for overreacting about Alec and Rhea, while Alec was remorseful and honest regarding his behavior. Due to this, I feel like if Alec made it to the final 5, he would have been open to working with Connor. So, if Jake and Connor went behind Gret's back and eliminated Rhea instead, they could then go to Alec and tell him that Gret wanted him out. This could result in Alec realizing that Jake and Connor directly saved him and that Gret was trying to play both sides. Both of these realizations would prompt Alec to side with Jake and Connor to take out Gret next, allowing them to go into the final 4. Not to mention that making this move also eliminates Rhea, who was in direct opposition to Connor by this point. And yes, eliminating Rhea also means that Connor probably doesn't get injured in the horse challenge. So to recap, eliminating Rhea instead of Alec is a much more ideal move for Jake and Connor since it would put them in a more certain position in the game. Again, even though I don't think Jake and Connor made the ideal move, it's very fortunate that it worked out for them on a strategic level, since Ali ended up flipping to eliminate Gret at the final 5. But of course, it wasn't all good for Jake and Connor, since keeping Rhea in the game led to Connor getting injured, which resulted in Connor quitting at the final 4 and leaving Jake in the finale with his mortal enemy and the person who injured Connor. I guess this should serve as a reminder that this game can get really physical and that we need to be aware of that when making key decisions. And this reminder will prove to be true in the last item on this list. The fifth and final move on this list is something that I think should be talked about more, because it's sort of unique compared to the other moves on this list. This move is the collective decision from Connor, Ali, Jake, Aiden, and Tom to vote for Gabby in episode 12. As a refresher, episode 12 was the first episode after Connor returned to the game. And after recognizing how fractured the heroes' coalition was, Connor stepped up and rallied the heroes together to force a 5-5 tie against the villains, causing Gabby and Tom to compete in a tiebreaker challenge. This ended with Gabby narrowly winning the tiebreaker, eliminating Tom from the competition. The reason why I think this move wasn't ideal was because Gabby was a decent physical competitor up to that point, so it may have been better to vote for a villain who was less physically inclined than Gabby in order to give the heroes a better chance at winning the tiebreaker. And notably, the heroes could have realistically prevented this outcome from happening given the information that was available to them. Heading into the elimination ceremony, the heroes' coalition was well aware that the 5-person villains alliance was going to vote together. So with this in mind, the heroes should have been able to figure out that their best hope of maintaining their numbers was for the 5 of them to vote for one of the villains and force a 5-5 tie, which they know would be solved by a tiebreaker challenge. If they can correctly deduce that there will be a tiebreaker challenge, then logically, their ideal move is to vote for the villain that they feel is the weakest in challenges in order to give themselves the best chance at winning the tiebreaker challenge. Of course, since Alec won that episode's immunity challenge and Rhea had immunity from helping Connor return to the game, the heroes had to put their votes on either Gabby, Gret, or Yul. Out of those 3, I feel like the ideal move would be to vote for Yul since he displayed the least amount of challenge prowess up to that point in the season. At the very least, he performed worse than Gabby in challenges up to that point. For example, when Yul found the sandbag in the episode 4 challenge, Gabby easily tackled Yul and had the upper hand until Hunter intervened. And in episode 5, Gabby was a key part in helping the Cyan team complete a come from behind victory thanks to her speed, while Yul and Gret were only the second set of campers to finish the first leg of the relay. Not to mention that Gabby is a very physical individual, considering how she beat up Derek in the finale of Season 1, while Yul was beat up in Season 2 at the hands of Maggie. So, I don't think it's unrealistic for the heroes to see that Yul was the weakest of the non-immune villains and then target him in order to give themselves a better chance at winning the tiebreaker. But because they missed that opportunity, they ended up losing Tom, arguably the strongest hero left in the game at that point. Of course, there's still a possibility that Yul wins the tiebreaker anyways if Alec intervenes like in canon. But at least in this hypothetical, the heroes could say that they tried their best and put themselves in the best possible position to gain the advantage. And at the end of the day, that's all that the competitors can do. In shows like Disventure Camp, competitors won't always be able to make ideal moves due to a variety of factors such as emotions and external drama. But when the competitors can approach a situation with a clear mind and determine what the ideal course of action is for them, the moves that they make can be a beautiful thing. And these moves can definitely play a role in making a show like Disventure Camp entertaining and beautiful. And that about does it for this video. What did you think of the video? Do you agree with my thoughts on these moves? Do you disagree? What moves in Disventure Camp do you think weren't ideal for the campers that made them? Either way, please let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. Thank you very much for watching. Click like if you like the video, click subscribe if you really like the video, and for some ending words of wisdom. Think twice before throwing a glass bottle at anything. Because I can assure you, cleaning up the broken pieces of glass can be a real pain. Thank you, and farewell.